Alan Steinfeld. Welcome back to Nature of Reality Radio, and thank you for bringing your friend Mira, who's on for the first time. You are on for the second time. People who have been listening to my show for a long time may know that back in the old days of this show, when I was on Blog Talk Radio, I kind of made the controversial statement at the end that I wouldn't be having my guests on a second time because I try to make a mission of getting a different guest on every single week until the day I die, as I felt that was the fairest, most impartial, and most informative way of doing a show. But there have been exceptions to that, especially exceptions when guests ask to come on for a second time. And as you did, at Contact in the Desert, so it's only fair and reasonable that I let you come on again. And thank you for bringing your guests. This was a last-minute decision for you to do so. I had no idea it was going to happen, but thank you very much. A couple disclaimers to get out here. First of all the listeners who had to deal with listening for the past 2.5 years on my show with my voice in one headphone ear and then my guest voice in the other headphone ear, if you listen to the show with headphones, that was because it was my fault. I did not set the Skype recorder off of stereo. I assumed all along that was some sort of a sabotage or something. Nobody told me anything about it. So I finally fixed the problem. So anybody who listens to my show the past 2.5 years, it's not going to be a problem from now on, but the past 2.5 years will, if they listen to the headphones, will have to listen to my voice in one ear and the guest the other. If I suggest you try to listen to my show in a way that you don't have to listen to headphones, but if you do, just suck it up and deal with it. It's not really a big deal. It's just a little glitch that what it is, and we'll move on from that. And second of all, several weeks ago, I got a message from YouTube saying my show has a lot of spam on it, so they're going to review my channel. That's bullshit, because all I do is interview people and upload the interviews to YouTube, so I don't know how that could possibly be spam. I have no doubt that's a nice way of telling me that my show exposes a lot of stuff that the powers that be don't want people to hear, so they're going to consider doing to me what they did to Alex Jones and a bunch of other people that got censored, so God forbid that happens. I do have all my past interviews uploaded as an MP3 format. I don't think I'm going to go through the trouble of re-uploading them. I got better things to do with my life. There may be some that I consider especially important that I may upload, but it's better to just move on if that happens, and just have me in my hearts, have me in your prayers, and hope that my channel does not get shut down. Nature of Reality will continue in some way, shape, or form, if not on YouTube, in some way. But I babbled long enough. Alan Steinfeld, welcome back, and Mira, thank you for coming on. You guys got the floor. You said you wanted to talk about multidimensionality in this hour or so that we've got, but we can just add limit and let our angels and guides guide us and protect us and help us do the best subjects and topics. So you guys can talk. What do you want to say? You got the floor.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, I wanted to bring my friend Mira into this conversation because we've been discussing these levels of reality that exist, and there's one level where people are very limited. They only know what their education, their politics, their religion tell them is true. And then you go to something like a UFO conference, and there's no place for someone from the mainstream to connect into that reality. So that's one level where the world doesn't make sense to those people, and not knowing that ETs, UFOs exist doesn't make sense to people like us. So I'm trying to make the bridge of how do we integrate realities that don't intersect from many levels of consciousness. And this is something Mira's dealing with in her own way, I think, in you deal with in the financial world, in the personal world. And how do you, I'm just curious, because function on many, many levels, and some people just don't get it. Mm-hmm. And other people say, oh yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's what I thought. Mm-hmm. She would be a good addition, Andrew, to the show, because she sees it from a different perspective that I see it. So I appreciate, like, how do you make that bridge? Because I'm trying to find a way to make that bridge. And I'm sure you are too. That's why you do the show, Andrew.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think it is kind of funny. I feel like I'm known as the person who people can talk to about everything from their money to their trauma to their ayahuasca journey to their alien contact, all in one conversation. And it's currently that's a unique thing, but I see a future where that's actually normal, where we're recognizing that we are these, saying even we're dimensional beings can sort of throw people off too, because then that means, like, what, are you existing in all these different dimensions? And what do you mean? Like, are you more than I can see? But really, it's as you talk about so often, Alan, it's just like allowing these different aspects that we're conscious of have a natural integration process.
Right. I think the thing that I'm focusing on, how do we get beyond the limited self? How do we know what we don't know? How do we consider the possibility that might be beyond our grasp of reality? And this is questions that I've been dealing with a long time. That's why I've called my show New Realities. It's such, how do we know? It goes back to expanding beyond the known world, what we think is true. And it's all based on conditioning. You look at a little child, there's no limitation on what they think is true or not. And we then grow up in systems that try to shut down what we know and our level of wonder. It's really about wonder. That's why I am in pursuit of the unknown, because it's full of wondrous possibilities, and there's no limit to the amount of magic in the universe. But we have to believe that there is magic. So, what do you think about that, Andrew?
Well, I couldn't help but agree with Arthur C. Clarke in his quote. Maybe I'm not saying it right, but something to the effect of any high-level technology is indistinguishable from magic. There is definitely truth to that, as everything is consciousness in an essence. But when it comes to the matrix that we're living in, there's definitely free will interference and definitely suppression of consciousness, which leaves us to the bound to the certain things that we are bound by. And I heard you mention that Myra has a lot to do with money, and I've been bitching about this on my show a lot in the past recent times about how this whole thing about a global currency reset, RV, Nasara Jasara thing has been, it said it might happen next Tuesday, and it's becoming an annoying and sick running gag, and it's getting kind of pathetic, and I'm kind of thinking that maybe the people that are supposed to make it happen are either not trying hard enough, or I don't really know if the bankers really are giving as much resistance as they are, and it also kind of disturbs me that our ET brethren are not willing to, like, they have the ability to shut the powers that be down in a heartbeat if they were to pull a doomsday switch, but they insist on not shutting the bankers down in a heartbeat to make the currency reset happen right away. I mean, they insist on making us humans work it out for ourselves, and that seems to be postponing it more than it should. And I mean, they say money is just a form of exchange, it's just a form of energy, but how can you not hear people like Alex Collier say things like we're the only civilization in the Milky Way that uses money, and not get pissed off to hear that and say, well, god damn it, it's time for us to join the rest of the club. Can we just maybe crash the damn dollar so we can finally join the rest of the club? And well, what are we not doing that's causing us to still be slaves to a fractional reserve system that makes debt and inflation unavoidable?
Right. So what we're not doing is trusting our higher self and getting rid of the corporate systems that, of course, keep those things in place. And we, like some people say, it's a slave planet. I don't believe that. I think we can overcome it with what's coming online. We just talked to this guy who's told us all about the free energy that I think is possible. The universe is full of free energy. Once we have unlimited amount of energy, we won't be enslaved to a corporate system that has domination over who we are and what we can do. We'll be in what I call the flowering of humanity, where the major effort of life on planet Earth will not be to make money, it'll be to be creative artists of the unknown. This is our future. So we have to get through this little glitch for the last 10,000 years based on money. But really, our destiny as human beings is to be the great creative gods that invent new possibility. What do you see, Mira?
Yeah.
With free energy or enrollment. What would you say?
Oh gosh, we're covering a lot of bases right now. I would say, I mean, I kind of want to tie it to what we've been talking about last night and today around this dissociating from what is causing the challenges. And I think it's just a process of us all on our own internal path, like stepping into remembering our higher self, stepping into trusting ourselves, stepping into like being the change we want to see, and then coming together and collectively creating it. So there's like this element of recognizing all the challenges that are going on. And like, Alan, what I think you bring a lot of insight and light to is like focusing on the unknown magic and possibility that we can't even comprehend, and at least having a fingernail of our awareness in that. And I recently heard this definition of magic, that magic is just a shift of consciousness at will. Like a miracle is like just a shift of is just like something shifts in consciousness, and we're like, wow, that was miraculous. And magic is a shift in consciousness at will. So when we're all operating in our higher selves from a place of intention through our hearts, we will start experiencing like magical, miraculous moments that are creating these new realities.
Right. Ding. She said the magic word. No, but it's true. We're at the edge of that. So I don't like to get caught up in, well, I know conspiracies exist, but anger and resistance and, all that doesn't bring us anywhere. Angry at the system. I think we have to bring joy, the sense of peace to ourselves, and not be victims or act like victims of a system that doesn't treat us as humans. We have to find the source of our own humanity first, because no one's going to give that to us. And so we need re-education. We need the experience of pleasure. We've come to planet Earth to experience pleasure and joy and love and excitement, and people get this in little doses, but we can be like dolphins that do it 24 hours a day. So that's my little input there, Andrew. And that's
well, thank you. And when it comes to things that we're supposed to be seeing happen this year, it said 2019 is going to be a year of disclosure and some big things being revealed. Well, I mean, that was did happen recently. I mean, with Google coming out with whistleblowers saying that they're doing things to try to turn the election away from Trump's favor and turn it towards the Democrats' favor, because the powers that be seem more inclined to go with the Democrats than they are with Trump, because they see Trump does have some good in him to try to beat the system for humanity. But I mean, that's not the kind of disclosure that I want. I want something really, really big. And well, who doesn't? I mean, we want the free energy to come out, and it's also been said that 2019 is the year that 9/11 will be disclosed by the mainstream media and or the government, and they will say, sorry, the 9/11 truth was right all along. Get used to it. That's a reality. But I mean, that could have happened all the way back in 2016, because word on the street is Edward Snowden has documents that expose that 9/11 was right all along, and he wants to release them, but he chickened out because the powers that be threatened to murder lots of people if he did. And well, I mean, when does it come to the time where we say stop chickening out, release it? If people end up dying, then that's a sacrifice worth making. So
well, I don't know if I mean, yeah, I know what you're saying, but I try to transcend politics personally. Donald Trump is. I mean, I just can't talk about that guy or see or any. It's not about politics. It's like disclosure's not going to happen because somebody comes on the news and says, guess what? Disclosure is an inner process. It's a spiritual awakening. It's not about anyone telling us. It's not about authorities. We've given our power away to authorities and politicians, and they really don't control. We think they control the system because they want us to think that they control things, but they're not controlling our destiny. They're not controlling your joy. They just add to our let's say, anxiety by giving us the illusion that they have power. They don't have power over our individual process of being, our humanity. Yes, they can create laws and do whatever they want, but no one can take away your happiness. There's a lot of poor people out there who are joyful, a lot of rich people out there who are miserable. Reality is an individual inside job. It's not what you see in the world. And so people get caught up in all sorts of nonsense that they think it's important. And on some level, I'm not saying it isn't. Yes, it is. But the truth we have to come to is the sense of self, that no one can take that away. No one can change our fundamental belief about the wonder that we are and the miracle of creation. And yes, you may be tortured, you may be this, but people find a way to find themselves even in dire circumstances and lose themselves even in the best. So it shows us we've been distracted by the external circumstance because politicians, government, corporations want us to believe that that's true, that that's going to make us happy. And so that's part of what I have to say. What do you think there?
Are you asking me or Myra?
No, I'm asking you first because
Oh,
I want to know how you, well, maybe you do or don't, let the external influence, and of course you can't help it, influence your mood and your reactive, and have you been able to find that sense of joy in yourself that's I guess different than anything else something from the outside might be telling you?
well, the thing is, I've been told by some people at some spiritual events that I've gone to recently that I need to focus more on inner work, and I get that. Look, inner work, what does that mean? And well, they kind of explained it to me, but they kind of couldn't explain it in a definitive, true way. It's kind of one of those things you have to discover for yourself, and I can't argue with that. Now, when it comes to blaming yourself for everything that happens to you, I mean, some people like Credo Motwa, the Zulu shaman, he said the best advice anybody ever gave me was my mother telling me you have no one to blame but yourself. But I can't beg to differ a little bit on that because I know that we live in a matrix where there is free will interference, and if there's free will interference, then is it wrong to blame the people that are doing free will interference for some of your hardships? I don't think so. And it also begs the question, like people say, don't obsess about the powers that be and the bad forces because you're only giving them power. Well, I say no. If my intent is to stop them, then of course I'm not going to give them power. And also, one could make the argument you're only as strong as your weakest link, and our weakest links are those places in our lives where the system of domination and control still has some power over us. So what's wrong with both exposing and trying to throw a monkey wrench into those weakest link parts so that we can finally attain the higher dimensional, higher consciousness that we seek to attain, that people like you are so big on getting out?
Right, right, right. No, I know what you're saying. There's people out there who can upset our day, but the inner work, when people say that to you, doing the inner work, it means like, look at the reasons you're getting upset. Yeah, it doesn't mean there isn't a matrix out there that's trying to keep all the power and control of themselves, but why do some people sometimes get beyond it and find like the peace that passes all understanding, like Jesus said? We're looking for that peace that transcends the power control systems that want to stop us from finding ourselves. You know what I mean? Like we can find that peace that passes all understanding. I think that's our destiny. And if we get caught up with blaming the outside, yeah, it's like half the problem. I agree. There's offense and defense. You have to make the world a better place, and you have to do the inner work to to make yourself a better person within your own feeling, within your only feeling sense. Like look at your own psychology. Look at what really pisses you off. Look at why you're really angry. It might be the corporate structures and the matrix, or it might be a projection. I'm not saying that not people who make you angry, but it also might be something that occurred in your childhood that your parents were doing that you then project onto the world. You know, there's a lot of angry peace demonstrators, and they're angry because they haven't worked through their personal stuff. The way to make change is to find that peace in yourself and be it in the world. That's one way. Yeah, there's active behaviors we can do to make change, to clean up the planet, but it doesn't happen necessarily if we're angry, because nothing seems to get done by fighting war with more war. I think there's another way. I think there's a new paradigm of being. And, like Gandhi said, be the peace you see in the world. And that's not a little thing. That is working on your own inner self. And so the old way hasn't worked. The system has been in place for 5, 10,000 years, and they're still in control, but they haven't stopped people from escaping and being free with their own self knowledge and self awareness, and tuning into the miracle of creation, whatever that is. I'm talking to you, Andy.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes, I do. And well, what can people do to do their part to raise the consciousness and help us attain the higher levels of love and all? Well, I just got back from Alien Con, and it was a fascinating conference in Los Angeles, and I think it was a great idea scheduling that on the summer solstice weekend because the energies of the solstice really, really intermingled with that and made it all the more all the more energized it all. So a lot of preaching to the choir, but a lot of new stuff too that was worth talking about, and I feel I did a great job making my presence felt. So it's good for me, and well, good for a lot of other people that things like that happen. And then we got. I remember you being at a Portal to Ascension with Neil Gore. I feel kind of sorry for him because his next Portal to Ascension conference is going to be at the same weekend as Alien Con in Dallas, and that's kind of David versus Goliath, and he's the David, and Alien Con's the Goliath conference, and he may lose a few potential audience members. But out of curiosity, are you going to be there, and do you know of any specific Ascension-related things that are going to be discussed at that conference that are worth maybe talking about on my show right now?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. One Ascension-related thing is the panel Deborah Justy's doing with me, Kimberly Meredith, J.J. Hurtak, Desiree Hurtak, about the actual process of ascension. I haven't done it, which is, I mean, how you define ascension is changing this is how I define it, the ability to change your body into a light frequency. You know, that's what I think, when you can modify your molecular structure so you become a light essence, you've ascended out of this dimensional plane into a higher dimension. Now, the person on that panel who's actually done that is J.J. Hurtak. He did that. He was gone with his body for 3 days. He came back and he downloaded this book called The Keys of Enoch, because when he ascended, he saw Enoch and Metatron standing there, taking him to the next level of consciousness. So being around that energy and being around someone who's actually ascended is a miracle in manifestation there, you know? I mean, and he's a nice guy, he's a friend of mine, and he has a lot to say, and he talks about many levels of multidimensional realities that we exist on. Do you know who I'm talking about, J.J. Hurtak?
I think maybe I've heard the name, maybe I haven't. So it's
look up his website. Look up keysofenoch.org. And really, people talk about ascension, and I don't really think they have any idea what they're talking, or they know what they're talking about. Like, what does that mean to you, for instance? What does ascension mean?
Well, what should it mean? A lot of confusion there. I mean, people think about ascension being we're going to morph into crystalline bodies and start burping butterflies and farting rainbows, but that's kind of going off the deep end. There's it means, wants to say it's not really ascension because that's a misnomer. It's moving closer to source, which really isn't ascending over anything. And George Kavasilis, one of the frequent sources I use on my show, second ever guest on my show, he has talked about an ascension deception of sorts, where people have totally misconstrued and misrepresented what ascension is supposed to be about. So I don't really know if I can give a definitive answer to what ascension means for me, because there's so much out there, so many different things, that I don't know what to make of it. I just listen to it and, well, make what I can of the facts.
Well, I'll tell you what it means to me, because I've studied this since 1981, where I met certain spiritual teachers who claim to be ascended masters. And what it means to me is when you complete the human experience, when you have owned, or when you can look at everyone and say, I know who that person, I know what they're feeling. You may not know who they are, but you know what they're feeling. You look in everyone's eyes and you say, yes, I've been that. I have felt that. I have known that. I've known your pain. I've known your anger. I know your hunger, your jealousy, your rage, your joy. When you own the human experience, when you've had every emotion that you can possibly have within this realm of emotionality, and that's really what the third dimension is about, or the human realm anyway, which I really call the fourth dimension. What it's really about is feeling. You know, feeling is the future, but it's also who we are. We're feeling creatures, meaning emotionally feeling. And when you've owned every emotion, doesn't mean you have to have done everything. You don't have to jump out of a plane, or you don't have to like do this, but you can feel the total range of human possibility. Then you've owned it. Then you start to accelerate the cellular frequencies within your DNA, and You start to gain a sort of light around because you're at peace. This is what the inner work's about, Andrew. This is like tapping, I think. I mean, I'm not saying I'm there. I'm saying I'm working on it. The inner peace is finding yourself at peace with everything that can come at you, whether you're the richest or the poorest, in jail or on top of a mountain. You find this peace where you've satisfied your own humanity. And when that happens, there's an energetic awakening, I feel, that happens throughout the whole body. You start to glow. You start to tap into these resources of your brain, which is an untapped receiver of greater transducing energy. And when you start to access these newer, higher consciousnesses, you start to transcend this plane. You start to ascend your consciousness. And when you ascend your consciousness, you can ascend your body with it. So does that make sense?
It makes as much sense as I could make sense of it, and I think anyone else listening and trying to make sense of ascension could make sense of it, if that makes sense. But other things that we need to discuss regarding this, interesting. Want to talk about multidimensionality, and I just watched a video on one of the channels I subscribe to on YouTube about humans entering other dimensions. And one of the things regarding humans going through ascension is our ability for our physical and or spirit bodies to enter other dimensions at will, or whether it's going to have to happen through other work or through synthetically, like maybe taking some sort of a psychoactive substance like ayahuasca, cough medicine, or amanita muscaria mushrooms to have an out-of-body experience, or whether we can do it at will, or whether we can actually have a lucid dream while we're awake, or whether we have to go to sleep to do these things. Yeah, it's basically entering other dimensions, realms, whatever you want to call them, of consciousness at will. Versus, well, I'm sorry, we're stuck in a matrix, so we can't do it at will. It's going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of work. Well, how much time, that dreaded word, and what kind of work does one need to do? And I mean, is there a point where you can do as much work as you want and not get anywhere, and then say, screw it, I got better things to do in my life. I need to move on and realize that this is a point where it's not worth pursuing anymore? There's a lot of variables, I know, but I'm sure you understand where I'm going with this.
No, that's a really good question. I appreciate it. It's about states of consciousness, and it's about when you start to move into different levels. You don't need ayahuasca. We have natural DMT in our brain. Every night we hallucinate complete worlds, and that's because the DMT, the serotonin, is activating the neural nets that is flushing higher realities into our awareness through our own sense of being here, our own being. So we don't need ayahuasca. I mean, people can do ayahuasca, and sometimes it's helpful to shake them up out of their like old stuck place. But just watch your dreams, be lucid in those other realities, because states of consciousness, dimensions are states of consciousness. Really, when you could see someone on alcohol, they are actually, and they're drunk on alcohol, they're in a different dimension in a sense. They are seeing the world in a particular way based on their distortion of their neurochemistry. And as we change our neurochemistry, as we change our state of consciousness, we're actually changing our dimensional reality. So they may be in this dimension with us, people in altered states, but they're really in their own dimension in a sense. And then, do you know what I mean? It's about dimensions are consciousness. People think they have to, disappear or something like that. That's one level, but everyone's living in a sense, I define, their own dimensional reality. They're living in their own state of consciousness. Carlos Castaneda calls it the shift of the assemblage point. When the focus on your energetic body shifts to a new position, your reality assembles itself in different ways, and you've entered a different dimension. I mean, that's just one way to classify that. So Do you understand what I mean when I was saying consciousness, states of consciousness are dimensional reality? That's how I understand it. I'm not saying it's true. This is just what I have figured out. Some people you just can't talk to because they're so dense. They're living in a different reality. They're not living in you may see their physical body, but they're really not here. They're living in a dogma of their own creation. So that's my definition. Does that
Yes,
make sense?
and here's a little something that Myra may be able to chime in on. I have had some experiences with ayahuasca. First time I took it, I totally screwed up. Some friend of mine gave it to me. He bought the concoction ingredients off the internet and made a concoction for me, but I did not do the dieta. I masturbated the night before. I ate before taking it, so all I did was yak and shit, and well, it cleansed me, but I didn't have the psychedelic experience, so in that sense, it was wasted, but then again, it still helped cleanse me. But the second time I did it, I did go to South America, Sapan Inca retreat in the not too far from Machu Picchu in Peru this past December during the winter solstice or summer solstice in that case, because southern hemisphere, and I did 2 ayahuasca ceremonies and 1 San Pedro ceremony, and that time I did make sure to prepare for it. I think it was an experience to remember. I do believe I got something out of it, and the people that gave me the ceremony seemed very legit. They're very knowledgeable, but it kind of disturbed me that after the retreat was over, they kind of, it's ironic in a sense that they told me, um, when you get back to America, I think maybe you should consider therapy, Andrew. You come across as a schizophrenic or someone with an autistic spectrum disorder. And I mean, when I was there, I was trying to talk a lot of spiritual and consciousness stuff. And maybe they're used to having people lost in the matrix come down to get ayahuasca. And they're not used to having people like me talk about the things they are. And well, I give them credit for having the psychiatric abilities to diagnose me in that sense, but it seemed kind of weird for a ayahuasca shaman who seemed very legit to actually tell me to seek therapy and also even tell me to suggest I take medication when the only thing medication is good for is fucking your brain up. So that kind was kind
But
of,
what did the ayahuasca do for you? I'm curious.
well, for one, it caused the greatest feeling of coziness I've ever felt in my life. I actually wanted to wrap myself in a blanket because it felt so cozy and so relaxing. And probably the greatest sense of peace and oneness I felt in my life. I didn't really see too many visions, like closed eye visions, although some of the thoughts that I had were more realistic and surreal than other ones. And also the San Pedro that I took, it caused it was weird. I was thinking a lot of negative things, but they weren't bothering me. It was like it was trying to bring the negative thoughts to the surface to cleanse me of them, and but I wasn't being bothered by them. I was like able to make a joke out of them. And if I had a choice between San Pedro and peyote, which I did peyote in March of 2016 in Arizona, I think I'd pick peyote because the peyote experience seemed to be a little better for whatever the reason.
Take away from this. I mean, okay, you do it. I've done it myself, and I felt quite joyful. But I don't know. It's less. I mean, people do. It's a fad now. It's an epidemic. I don't know why people are doing it. I mean, what do they learn from it? How are they evolved? How are changed by this? This is
Okay,
what.
so you think Graham Hancock is out of his mind when he says that every politician before going into office should take ayahuasca 10 times to make themselves as pure as possible? I mean, do you
No,
think he,
I think that's probably a good idea because politicians are so uptight and rigid. But I don't agree with Graham Hancock that everyone needs it. I think once you take the medicine, you don't have to keep taking medicine. I mean, I know people are not going to like that, but you've taken the medicine, and if you've done a good job, it gives you a lot to work with. But I still don't know. I mean, yes, trauma. I just met all these veterans that took ayahuasca, and they helped them definitely through their trauma. I think there's good benefits from that. But the average person is just curious about altered states of consciousness. I mean, everyone's traumatized, of course. Has it helped you? Let me ask you that. How have you changed? I mean, yeah, you had a great cozy experience, but so does curling up with a pillow.
well, actually, interestingly, it seemed for a little while I was able to get out of the habit of biting and picking at my nails. I mean, they say ayahuasca helps with drug addiction. Well, apparently it helps with bad habits. I mean, I've started doing it again recently, but very interesting that period of time after that, I had no urge or inclination to bite my nails and pick my nails. I was a little resistant to that. So I think from a medicinal standpoint, it kind of helped with that. And I do kind of want to switch gears for just a moment here. I
Yes.
remember in your last interview, you talked about how you went to India and you wanted it to be spiritual, but you discovered that India, well, it's spiritual, but it's also a bit of a dump, a garbage dump in a sense. And well, I discovered the same thing myself. I did go to India for the International Yoga Festival in this past March, and I know that my consciousness had definitely changed for the better when I got back home, and I know that because when I got back to my job, I found out that the one employee, I'm not going to name names here, but like the employee who was kind of the asshole of the business and like the biggest nuisance of the business during the time that I had been in India had gotten fired. And there's a lot of stories about people who, once they change their lives and start acting like the law of attraction is real, they find that, among other things, that their jobs, like people that were a nuisance of the jobs, end up getting either fired or finding another place to work when you had no idea that that was going to happen. So I think that was one, among other things, that showed that going to India, participating in that yoga festival and making the most of it, did help me from a very positive standpoint.
Right. Well, that's great. I mean, I'm not saying anything negative necessarily about India. It's just they have some stuff that was not comfortable for me there. So, what is your question about that, or you just made that statement? I mean, what is that?
Well, I was made that statement and pointing out that these things are not accidents. That when you see changes in your life, when you do
Right.
things like go to a yoga festival for a week and make the most of it, and then you come home and you find that something in your life vastly improved for the better. And and as a matter of fact, I've actually gone through a similar experience myself. I've actually moved to a new address now. The old address, the digits in the address added up to the number 5. This new address that I'm at, the digits in the address add up to the number 7, which is very fitting for me because 7, that's a great number for spiritual work and research. And I could have moved earlier, but I was trying to save my family some money on insurance by keeping the rates down by staying at the other property. But now that I'm here, I've noticed things have gone for the better, and I've actually had some spiritual paranormal things of sorts happen that lead me to believe that the angels are definitely with me, and this is going to be a definite positive improvement. So if it works for me, it works for other people. And well, any advice on people who change their lives for the better, and from like an address standpoint, or even change their names or anything else that affects?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I think everything is vibration. We're living in a sea of vibration, right? So your name is a vibration, just the sounds of your name. So what you call yourself is a vibrational signature that identifies you. When you change, and personally, I don't feel like changing my name because I don't believe in names anyway, but people who do change their names, sometimes they have a life-changing, occurrence. They become richer or more successful. And I don't know how that really works, except what I'm saying, it's a vibrational identification. I mean, there's certain times we transcend those artificial labels and it becomes an internal vibratory awakening. So I do think there's something to vibration, and the world is vibration. We have to be careful about who we're around. What vibrations are we picking up? How to clean up our own intentional vibrations. And it's so complex and interactive. If we can be the best we can be, the most loving, the kind, gentlest, honorable, integral, then the vibration is inherent within the behavior. If you gossip, lowers your vibration. Really, talking about somebody lowers your vibration. Cursing, I mean, people can curse and they curse all the time, but that's a lower vibration. And smoking cigarettes, maybe people drinking alcohol. I mean, this is my judgment coming in, but honoring, serving, these are things that uplift your vibration. This is so we're always being pulled down and up. And if you want to be in integrity, not talk about people, don't gossip, you could live at a higher vibration and you don't even have to change your name. I'm kidding, but stuff like that.
Oh, okay. Well, you just said something interesting. I certainly agree with the alcohol thing, but the thing about smoking tobacco lowering your vibration. Now, this is very controversial because I'm trying to set the record straight on this. I was a pack-a-day smoker, but I was smoking the lousiest cheap cigarettes that you buy from like a convenience store. That's You watch the History Channel episode Modern Marvels about tobacco and learn what's really in a cigarette. It's not the kind of tobacco that you want to be smoking. And I had from like 2013 to 2016 or so been able to stay off of tobacco, but then I decided to start smoking it again. But I only smoke mapacho, buy big bundles of mapacho fresh out of the Amazon rainforest. After I heard Andrew Bartz, the Akashic Records reader, say that tobacco helps clear out negative energies and negative entities, and it helps him communicate in 2 dimensions, which means that whenever he says far out things that sheeple would not understand, but believe it or not, tobacco, through some complex mechanism, allows for the sheeple to better understand him when he talks about that stuff, and he's smoking the tobacco at the same time. Now, this is pure, genuine, authentic tobacco, not the crap that we buy in stores and such, but I'm a little confused. Maybe you can make sense of this. James Gilliland, the guy who has the East City Ranch, he's got a very, very strict policy of no drugs or alcohol at the East City Ranch. He believes that it's harmful and will cause like negative entities to like affect people and will like ruin the experience and all. But he doesn't have a problem with people smoking tobacco there, and it does seem a little counterintuitive that tobacco, which contains nicotine, a substance that you can overdose on if you actually swallow it, actually allows for the cleansing and helps purify things. But yet cannabis, which contains nothing that you can really overdose on, does actually open up holes in your aura, which allows for negative entities to hijack you. It seems counterintuitive, but apparently that's the way it works. So could you maybe set the record straight on what you meant when you said tobacco lowers your vibration? Because I
Well,
just pointed out some.
I don't think tobacco, I think, it depends how you use anything. I think the way people smoke cigarettes addictively here in this culture, compulsively, with all those chemical ingredients, it's like eating junk food, it's like eating fast food, it's like drinking Coca-Cola or having some cheap whatever McDonald's. It's like these things lower your vibration because they're not quality. I think if you use tobacco the way it was intended to be used by the Native Americans, which is in prayer, and I think tobacco can intensify the quality of the prayer because it has a effect on our nervous system, which can create finer acuity. Then you're using tobacco occasionally in the right way. But if you're using it addictively because you don't want to think about what your boss said to you at work or what your girlfriend said or this, then you're using that in a way that lowers your vibration by stuffing it and smoking it out. So it all depends how you use it. So, I think maybe I like James's Ranch. I've been there. I think if you use tobacco, I think that's a kind of a sacred ground. I think people might be more open to using it in the way the Native Americans intended it to be used, not compulsively, not addictively, but as a way of ritual. Then then that's fine. It increases your vibration because you're tuning in to the divine, the sacred with that.
Yes, and Myra says she's worked with ayahuasca before. Mapacho tobacco and ayahuasca go together like Romeo and Juliet. Some people actually who do ayahuasca ceremonies put a pinch of mapacho in the ayahuasca to spice the brew up and enhance it, and also blow the tobacco mapacho smoke on the vine of the ayahuasca to enhance it spiritually and such. So just thought I'd point that out.
Yeah, I really think we don't need that stuff anymore. It's become faddish. It's become cultish. It's become something to do. It's become actually an avoidance. It's like, where's the ayahuasca this week? I'm not saying it hasn't helped a lot of people. I'm just saying people get stuck in that ayahuasca loop and they have to work with the medicine years, months, after they've done it. And they don't. In some cases, of course, some people do, and it's deep and it cleans out a lot of stuff, and I think we're vibrationally at a new place where we actually don't need those old forms, and I think we have enough accelerated ascending energy within our cellular structure and the new neural net frequencies that our brain is opening up to as cosmic energies flow into us, and that's why the ETs are arriving to create our own internal endogenous chemical awakenings, and this is what the dream time is all about, and dreaming and lucidity. So I think it can be like Facebook, like your cell phone, like everything, another trap, and it could be freedom. It's how you use it. It's how you use anything. It's who you are. So
Right.
that.
And it is how you use it. I mean, when it comes to tobacco, inhaling into your lungs is the quickest way to get addicted because that causes the instant rush. The thing you see on cigar and pipe tobacco saying cigars and pipes are not a safe alternative to cigarettes, bullcrap. They definitely are because if you don't inhale it, the cigarette companies just want you to believe that they're not a safe alternative because they want you to keep smoking the cigarettes thinking it's not going to make a difference. But I know from experience that people that smoke pipes and cigars, and that's genuine, decent tobacco rolled up in a nice tobacco uh, pipe bowl or cigar leaf, is definitely better than inhaling into your lungs and causing
But people
like,
want that inhaling
yeah,
into the lungs. That's what they want,
I
right?
know, the instant rush like a crack cocaine high, and that's not good. That's what you want. That's not what you want, and I try to encourage people not to do that, and I never do that when I smoke mapacho out of my pipes. So
But that's the lowering of the vibration. The way you do it, the way the foods you eat lower your vibration, right? The heavy, dense food. And I'm not saying don't eat meat because actually, for me, that's very grounding. But junk food, candy, sugars, I think that's much more addicting and a lower vibration than a fine quality, piece of something, So but we have to change ourselves through our thoughts, through the way we think, about the way we talk to ourselves. Psycho-cybernetics, that book talks about reformatting how you're talking to yourself. What do you say when you're alone with yourself? If you do something, you say, "Oh, you idiot, you did that again," or do you be easier and gentler on yourself? That is where the real shift in dimensionality happens, with your relationship to your own self, your relationship to your own mind, from the observer, which is your soul level of consciousness, to the personality, which is acting out on the earth plane. What's that relationship like, and how gentle are we with our own shortcomings? How
yes,
forgiving. And
okay. Let's switch gears here. Let's talk about something else here. Time travel is possible. I'm seeing that one of the articles on your newrealities.com site. Now, one thing about time and the future that this came up a conversation in a few talks at Alien Con, not surprisingly, and it's been interesting that Brad Johnson, I use him as a source recently. He's the guy who channels Adronis. He's once again caused a bit of a stir, being yet another ET contactee who gives a future date as a date when Earth is going to go through some sort of a major ascension. He's talking like 2037 being 3 days of darkness, he put it, but it's really like darkness in the sense of Earth shedding its cocoon to blossom into a higher level entity. And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, oh no, not this again. Is this another case of an ET contactee getting information from spirit or some alien force saying that we're going to ascend? And because we've been down this road before with people like George Kavasalis and David Icke and others who and like Ray Gusalanich too, like 2017, saying we're going to have this happen, and Tolek, and I hate to name names, but people know what I'm talking about here, and I'm thinking this is just going to be deja vu all over again. But it's interesting that some of these people who are getting information from higher levels of consciousness, be it source or an ET council or whatever, there's definitely not consistencies here. One of the people who spoke at AlienCon said, it's interesting how I don't really see humanity going into an ice age in the future, but many people who do like channel higher level entities, including Bashar. As a matter of fact, Daryl Anko channels Bashar, said we're going to go into an ice age in the future. And but I've talked about people with like Franco De Nicola, who said that what our climate is on Earth is entirely dependent on consciousness, and it really has nothing to do with where a planet is in the solar system. Cliff High, the Webbuck guy, he said that because we're going to enter an ice age because our orbit is in a part where the planets Saturn and Jupiter, their gravity is lined up, and that's going to pull us farther away from the sun and cause an ice age. But I assert no, that has nothing to do with us being in an ice age. He's got it all wrong. It's if our consciousness is at a very high level, then it'll help keep the climate of the planet stable. And that makes me wonder, okay, why are people not seeing that in the future? Why are some entities seeing, like, in future time, like an ice age happening, while others see a good harmony on Earth where people don't have to worry about, like, ice age destroying crops and all that, and everybody's going to be able to live in perpetual harmony and be able to not have to deal with the things that we deal with today. So, any
So
comments?
what's the question? What is the question about?
I really don't know what the question is there. I'm just trying to point out that things in the future regarding what people are seeing that are getting information from higher levels of consciousness, there's differences in what they see in the future regarding, like, ice age or 3 days of darkness in 2037, or humanity living in harmony, and different timelines and all that regarding when we're going to be not have to deal with oil and money and suppressed technology anymore. So any idea on why there's so many differences here? How does the fourth dimension work, if you get my drift,
I
to
get
explain
it.
these differences?
Yeah, you know how it works is that the future is the unknown. That's why it's the future. I mean, people have projections of timelines and they have intuitions and premonitions and, prophecies. And the best prophecies are the ones that never come to pass because time is shifting all the time. So, yeah, people have pronouncements, but did anyone see the Notre Dame burning? No. Did anyone see the World Trade Center? I mean, no. So these shifts are based on the known. And what's so great about the future, if you don't believe it's all happening at once, is that it represents what we have yet to know. And that's what's exciting. So we can project a lot of fear about the future, and that may bring those fearful events, or we can project a lot of excitement because we have yet to know what's possible within this sphere of being. And yeah, there are parallel timelines. There's people that live in very negative universes, perhaps, or you can shift your whole timeline and live in that joyful place. I mean, how do you choose to live? What do you want your reality to be? I mean, even beyond what we think of time, how do you want to live? What brings you the most happiness? That's a timeline worth choosing. As Bashar said, follow your excitement. What is your excitement? Well, I'm following it, I'm happy. I'm happy because I'm around people that also follow their excitement. So it's contagious that way. But yeah, so people get caught up in these technicalities of timelines, but really it comes down to what's your highest excitement? Yeah, the future this, the future that. And of course, you have to take precautions. There's a storm coming. You want to stock up on food. And yeah, it's great to look at the weather report, but sometimes those storms pass and sometimes they don't. But still, what's your highest excitement? It comes down to personal self. Reality doesn't exist without you, Andrew, without you. That's your reality. So how do you want to live it? You can ask questions, and which is great, or you can take charge and choose a way to be in the world with the reality that you're moving into. And that's very fluid. Realities are fluid. So yeah, weather is fluid because it depends on consciousness, but the whole scope of what we know to be true is fluid, and that's changing all the time because each moment is a greater possibility. That's what I believe.
Yeah, a little bit of a conflict there when you're talking about weather. like, I mean, George Kavaslis, he said that, like, whenever some sort of a natural disaster or an earthquake happens, and he's like, they so want you to think it's HARP, because when you think it's HARP, you give them power. Well, I mean, is it okay to think it's HARP if you want to try to use consciousness to bring about weather patterns for the betterment of humanity? Like, we got some issues here around the world going on right now. We're in the Midwest. Farmers aren't complaining about too little rain damaging the crops. They're complaining about too much rain damaging the crops. It's flooding like crazy out there and drowning the crops out. And that's not usually, it's usually the opposite that happens, but this time it's too much rain. And in India right now, there's so much droughts galore, and people don't think the monsoon is going to be as intense as it has been in the past, and may not replenish as much water as we've expected, we normally expect it to. And one might ask, okay, is this being caused by weather modification technology? And if it is, then okay, we have no choice but to think that it is that, and it would be in our best interest to acknowledge that and try to use our consciousness to maybe, I don't know, gather a lot of people to meditate and ask Source to change the weather in a way that counters the negative effects of these weather manipulations. So, do we worry and be concerned about the climate and try to use our consciousness to change it, or do we just let Mother Nature run its course?
No, where you can use our consciousness to shift the weather, I think we can if enough of us focus. I don't think HARP is as responsible as many people think for some of the natural disasters. I think pollution is, man-made environmental causes is probably more at fault for the shifting climates on the planet than some government-controlled weather modulator. I mean, yeah, I think I agree with that guy who said, George, that, yeah, we give too much power away to these conspiracies that, exist only in name and not in actuality. I don't think HARP caused the California fires. I don't know if they are causing drought, but I think human consciousness can dissolve clouds. I think we do. We are more powerful than we've been told, and we got to trust that. But we're not living at the effects of the environment. We can start to create the world we want to live in by coming together in groups and directing our consciousness to how we want to live, and cleaning up the planet, of course. Practical things. I'm not saying that will change the weather, but it'll definitely change the toxicity of the environments we're creating. So perhaps all that weather is to clean our atmosphere, but maybe that the rains are to cleanse the stuff we put in the sky. I mean, there's lots of levels. It's such a complex system, and human thought is very much connected to what shows up. So anyway, I should go soon, and Mira had to leave, but I appreciate all these questions. It's kind of great to just play with them and see what we can come up with.
All right. Well, I guess with that being said, call it a show now. But before I do, I give you the chance to get out anything you'd like to get out, and tell us about some future conferences you're going to be going to. I seem to be running into you often when I go to some conferences. There's people on my list that I seem to run into often, and you are one of them, be it a Portal to Ascension or some other conference. By the way, Portal to Ascension, I was devastated to hear that Stan Freeman passed away. He was supposed to go to that conference, Portal to Ascension, and he was the third ever guest on my radio show. And if my show ever does get kicked off the air, God forbid, and I wanted to re-upload any shows that I've done from the past, his would probably be the first one I ever uploaded, because that one kind of sets the stage for all the other ET UFO shows that I'd ever done after that, because he sticks with facts, and he was actually a lot more spiritual than he led to believe in his conference. Kathleen Martin, who was at Alien Contact in the Desert, said. So it's a shame he's not going to be at Portal to Ascension, but I trust that you are going to be there. I think you said you're going to be there, and again, because you were there last year, and anything else?
I'm going to be at Portal to Ascension. It is too bad about Stanton Friedman. He was definitely a pioneer. he was the first person I ever heard who I went to his lecture in 1977 that said flying saucers are real, and that planted a seed. It began a wake up call, and I knew it was true. I just knew that what this guy was saying in his own kind of strange, humorous way was real, and I didn't know how it fit into the whole dynamic matrix of what we call the world today, which is not the truth. But Stanton was a truth seeker. He was, and he dedicated his life to making the truth known, and he was a pioneer that way. So anyway, but I'm going to be at Portal to Ascension. Stanton, was supposed to be there. And following Portal to Ascension, the very next day, I'm going on the UFO cruise, October 6th to the 13th, out of San Diego. Look up UFOcruise.com and tell them you heard about it through me, Alan Steinfeld, New Realities, and sign up, because we're going to have the top of the line UFO speakers on that cruise. Linda Moulton Howe, Richard Dolan, I'll be there. J.J. Hurtak and Desiree Hurtak will be there. Travis Walton, James Gill, and who else? I mean, I would say the top researchers. Just hang out with the ones I mentioned is enough to want to make people come and be a part of this. Just hang out with Linda Moulton Howe alone is worth going on that cruise. So doing that, yes, October 6th to 13th, that is UFOcruise.com. Actually, in July 18th to the 22nd, I'm going to be at Pine Ridge talking about consciousness and contact with the Lakota people. You can look up Consciousness and Contact on Pine Ridge to find out more about that conference. You can also email, let's see, this woman, Mia, who's taking registration and organizing the conference. You can contact Mia Ferroleto at mia.feroleto@gmail.com. I'm giving a remote viewing workshop in Woodstock, New York in August. That's part of the Mystery Schools. Go to my Facebook page, Alan Steinfeld, and inquire about that. Let's see, what else am I doing coming up this summer? I'm going to be at the New Life Expo in October this summer. I'm going to take some time off and do some editing of some videos. Yes, of course, look at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/New Realities. Subscribe. I have over 18 million views, and you can email me at newrealities@earthlink.net. I appreciate your questions. Thank you, Andrew.
And I appreciate you coming on again. And I myself am taking a little bit of a break from a lot of conferences for a little while. We are in the year of the Earth Pig in the Chinese zodiac, and that is actually one of the least compatible signs for spiritual awakening, and it's a very good sign for saving money and getting things gathered up for the future preparations. So maybe this is a good year for people in the spiritual community to rest, take it easy, don't obsess about your spiritual work so much. It's the vibrations aren't really good with it. Any time is good to go for spiritual work, but Earth Pig, not so much so. So take it easy, folks, but do what you can. Have a good time. Listen to my show. Pray for the best for me, Alan Steinfeld, and everyone else. And Alan, it was a pleasure having you on, and I know that we'll see you in the future.
2020 is going to be a great year for some spiritual work, so tune into that, okay?
I will be ready. I will definitely research that when the time comes. All right. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thanks.